Okay, so SailPoint has two plugins, and we're going to install them both. So this is the one that I think SailPoint officially condones, and so let's get that one started. So we go here, install new software, and paste in that URL, do an add. Okay, this is IIQDA. I'm going to put SP in front of it. There we go. All right, so let's install this first, and we'll come back and do the next one. Okay, this will take a second or two. Okay, we just give it a next, accept the terms, finish, and this will start stalling, and it will take a while, so we'll hold off on that. We'll pause, come back. Okay, so it wants you to agree to this. I guess these are certs, so we'll say trust selected, and now it's going to continue to install. Pause again. Okay, when it finishes installing, we'll have to restart Eclipse, so we'll do that now, and then we'll come back and install the other one. Okay, so we're back. So the next thing we want to do now is install the IIQ tools. So let's go back to our Eclipse, install new software again. And then we're going to add IIQ tools. And we'll let it do its thing here. Okay, we're going to select that one. These are the same. So we're going to go with the one with the official looking name on it. Okay, do next, agree to the license, finish. Okay, and then we'll just wait until it's done. Okay, we got this again, so I think we saw this last time, so just trust selected, continue on. Okay, both plugins are installed, so let's do the restart, and we'll come back and set up a project with one of them. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is go to WebInflib in your SailPoint install and copy everything out of there, all those jars, and put them in a folder somewhere, wherever you normally keep your Java dependencies. And then we're going to go into Eclipse and create a user library. There we go. So new user library. I like to call it SP8.1 since that's what it is. Okay. Now we want to add jars. Add external jars, I guess. Okay, so they're over here. Over here. I'm just going to grab them all. Okay. There we go. So that's the next step, is to create the user libraries, and next will be creating a project. Okay, let's create a new project. So we're going to create an deployment accelerator project first, since we're going to need that to get the configuration stuff we need. Okay, so you select the project other, and you'll see there's SailPoint projects. We want an IQ project here. Next. Okay, now here's where it wants to know where your SailPoint lives and the password and all that. It's set to defaults now, and whether or not you're using SSB template, I'm going to not check that for now and just use the default stuff. So we'll call this SailPoint IIQ Deployment Accelerator Project. And let's see, when you do this now, it's going to want to try and go download jars from this server. But even when the server is running, it doesn't work. So it doesn't matter if the server is running or not. We'll just do a finish. It'll fail. We'll just continue. Okay, now you have the project. What you have to do here now is you have to add the libraries. So once the project's ready to go, come over here, build path. And what we want to do is add a library. And we're going to pick a user library and the SailPoint 81. Finish, apply, and close. Okay, now the next thing you have to do is this workflow here. So you have to go to your SailPoint instance, go into the config, file import, and then import this workflow. This is what makes all the magic happen. So you can essentially, from this project, you'll be able to pull artifacts from your SailPoint using the import artifact, and you'll be able to push stuff to your SailPoint by right-clicking on a file and saying, I think there's a deploy artifact. But all that's going to depend on your properties here and a few other settings that we have to do. So this is a VM here. I don't have everything set up to actually connect. We're just demonstrating creating the projects here. Once this is done, then we'll switch back to my running system to show how it all works. Okay, so the next thing we'll do is we'll create another project, but this time it's going to be a Java project. So we can do that. We want a Java project, basic stuff. Okay, we're going to call this IIQ Tools. All right, and we'll just do finish, I guess. Okay, now once we get this one set up, we have to do two things. We have to add two libraries. So one of them is add library, user libraries. We're going to add this one. And then we're going to add the IIQ Tools library. Okie dokie. So that's finished. Okay, so now we have both of our projects created. If we go here to properties, we'll see there's some IIQ settings over here. Okay, we want this connection timeout to put a 5 in there like that. And we want to change this down to 1. We want C data or 0. We want C data to be used all the time for our source files. So we'll apply and close. Okay, and then soon we have to copy this over here so that this project can then do the same thing that this one is doing. They don't really tell you much. I kind of figured that out on my own. So when we look in here, you'll see basically the same thing you saw when you set up the initial config. So you can change this at will, and then we'll copy the file, and I'll show that in the demo when I actually start using it. So this is how you set up the two projects once you install the plugins. That's it. Okay, so in the last video we created the two projects in Eclipse using the plugins that SailPoint has. So right now we have to do a couple of little things in order to make them usable. Okay, one is to get the SailPoint DTD so that we don't get a bazillion errors in our XML files. Another thing we're going to do is add a logger for our rules to run so we can debug stuff easier. And then we have to import this workflow into SailPoint because this is the workflow that this plugin uses, the accelerator uses to import and export stuff. All right, so let's get started. So we got our SailPoint running over here. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go into bin, we do Q console. Okay, and of course that takes a few seconds. Okay, now it's up, so we want to do DTD, and then we can say /temp/ SailPoint.dtd. Okay, now we're done with that. So what you want to do is whatever you're using to get your files off your VM or however you're doing it, you want to copy that DTD file, you want to put it in the config rule directory of your IIQ project, and then you want to put it at the base directory of your SailPoint accelerator, and then those guys will be happy. Okay, so now we want to add add one of these guys. Okay, is it SP custom? Okay, so now we're going to go back here, we're going to go to classes, we're going to go to our log4j, scroll down a little bit down here, and we're going to add our logger dot. Okay. Now, of course, we have to restart our server. Okay, now the last thing we need to do is import our file. So let's go here, get into SailPoint. I think it's here, and then here, and then choose the file. Let me see where it is. It's over here somewhere. XP Accelerator, this guy. Okay, so we got everything set up now, so we should be ready to actually start putting together a rule that we can deploy and test. Okie dokie. All right, so a couple things that I forgot to mention here. So before we can actually do anything, after we import the XML file here, we have to go into our preferences here and remove a couple of these items. So these are the ones: dashboard content, dashboard layout, identity dashboard. So all three of those need to be unchecked, otherwise you'll get a class not found error. So if you forget to do it, when you try to import an artifact into the project from SailPoint, it's going to try and look up all these objects, and if they don't exist in the identity, then you'll get a class not found. So these are the three that we're erroring out. So you have to get rid of those, uncheck them, and then everything will work. So because what you can do here is you could use the artifact import, and it'll pull from SailPoint into your project here, any existing rule or whatever it is you want. Okay, so that was one thing we have to do. Now we're going to go back here for now. We'll get to this one later. So for here we have our Java code and our XML bean shell. Okay, so you see here how the source is blanked out. Okay, and we have our attributes that or arguments we're going to be passing in, the context and the log. This is a very generic type bean shell we're going to do. Okay, so now these things here, okay, this plugin provides these things here that you can use, Okay, so what you want to do here is this is where you define where your XML file is for this code. Okay, so that's where it is here, config rule mytestbeanshell.xml. Okay, and then the XPath is rule source. So when we actually write our code here, the next thing we're going to do is we ignore these attributes that we're using in here that we have defined as arguments, because they're already defined by the rule engine, so we don't really need to have them defined in our code. So when this plugin goes to build the rule, it's going to take these things out. Anything that's in the artifact ignore is going to come out. Okay, and the other thing I do is I usually use the full class name or the full package name so that I don't have an error up here with an import that's not being used. So when this comes out, the whole thing comes out. All right, the next thing is your artifact body. This is where you define your execute or your main. Okay, so you could go down here and put in as many methods as you want. You don't necessarily need to pass anything unless you want to. So like, for example, if this method needs the context, it already has it. But if you generated something here that you want to pass in, you can certainly do that. Okay, so let's do public void method 2. Okay, oh, no, so there we go. Okay, so now when we hit save, you'll notice this plugin has this little button up here. So when we click the button, it's going to update the XML file and it's going to create this code in there for us. So let's see what it did. Okay, so it's putting in the C data, so we don't have to worry about escaping all the less than equal to stuff. All right, so here we have our logger that we created. Okay, now notice how the methods are defined first, and then our execute method has been completely removed, and it'll be replaced by any code that's wrapped in our execute method. So in our case, it's just the logger.error. Okay, so that's how you set these up. So it makes the code very readable. Okay, and then over here from the XML side of things, you can right click and do a deploy artifact. And we got a timeout. Okay, so we got to see if we can fix that. All right, I'll take a look at the timeout values, but essentially this is how this plugin here works. Now what I usually do is if there's already code deployed that you want to modify, I'll usually just use this one and check it out of SailPoint and make my changes here. This actually can work as a decent editor. Not great, not as good as doing it this way, but it is better than just coding a bean shell in Notepad. All right, so I'm going to finish this one up and we'll come back and do another one on fixing that timeout. Okay, so let's fix our timeout problem. So we go to here, go to preferences, IIQ tools, see that? Set that to 50,000 and do apply, close. Okay, so now, okay, so let's go over here. We set up our logger, so let's change this to debug. Okay, save this. Now we'll click the little button over here. Okay, now if we go into our XML file, we should see the code changed. Yep. Now if we right click again, we can deploy the artifact. Okay, rule deployed. Okay, let's switch over here real quick. Okay, we can do okay, well that comes up. We go over here and get this. Copy that. Wait for this to come up. Okay, so let's run our rule. And there we go. There's our debug out. My test bean shell is running. All right, so that worked. So we're looking good there. So now what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll put some more stuff in there for the methods, and then we'll do an artifact export from SailPoint into the other project to see what that looks like. Okay, we left off with, so by the way, these are the class not found errors you get if you don't uncheck those boxes. Okay, so we ended with having logs and a little rule that ran some logs. I think it was over here. There it is. Okay, so now we used the tools to create a new rule. All right, now, of course, if you already have one in SailPoint, you're not going to be able to use this. It's not going to come back to you in this format, of course. It's going to come back like this, and then you're going to be pretty much stuck in this XML file. Well, the solution now is with the SailPoint accelerator. So let's get rid of these. Okay, so now that we have everything set up in here with our default target and we're pointing to SailPoint and we have our timeout set properly, we can go here and we can do an import artifact. Okay, now this is where if you don't have all those checkboxes checked off properly, every time you fire this up, you're going to get one of these, and it'll tell you over here what it is, and then you just uncheck that one in that list that shows up in the SailPoint settings. Okay, so let's go back to here. So we can import from SailPoint is what this is. So we're going to import it into the project. So you can import by recently changed. So of course we have a rule here that we just imported. And we can also do it by category. So you can go down here and select something. There's different rule types that you can pick. So let's say, I think there's like JDBC. C1's missing. Yep. Yep, see, so you'll have to keep changing that if you want to use this. I changed this workflow and added a check. What they're doing is a for name to find it, and then they just throw the exception. I just catch it and ignored it. So I have that change in my normal SailPoint test environment. Okay, so let's just take one here that it has already. So this is the one that we did. We're going to pull it down. Okay, so here it is, right from SailPoint. Okay, now this one allows you to use, Java syntax checking over here. It pretty much ignores this except for the arguments. So it'll map things for you. So you could over here say, I don't know. Let's see, context. There we go. So you can still have the Java syntax checking in here with these XML files with the accelerator. So that's one of the things I wanted to demonstrate about how you can use these two different tools. Unfortunately, it would be nice if they sort of work together, but they don't. So what I've been doing is if I have a brand new rule that I'm working on that's really big and ugly and needs a lot of methods, I'll probably use this to create it. And then as far as maintenance is concerned, I'll probably use this from a maintenance standpoint if I have to work on something. But I have been in a situation where I've been asked to take some huge, ugly looking rules and convert them to something more readable and debuggable, in which case what I did was I pulled it in with the accelerator, and then I took the XML and generated one of these templates over here, and then moved all the code gradually into one of these classes until I got it all working and tested again. And then I could turn it back over, and the XML will come out a whole lot nicer, and it'll be, formatted nicer. And of course, there's other things you could do to make debugging these a lot easier. Like, for example, making sure you always have a logger. Instead of, when you're, doing log dot error, you always want to do something like error and then plus, the message, the e.get message, right? And then you can do comma E. A lot of people do this, and that really isn't very useful. It's better to let the logger print the exception for you, and then of course after that you can just throw the same one. That's really the best way to deal with it. Okay, so that's my final spew on this stuff. Eventually what I'm going to do is come back and take a look at what this does, turning that on. I think what happens is you can pull one of those SailPoint bundles down, and they usually come with a bunch of these target properties for talking to dev and prod, and I think it will work with all of that, but I haven't tried it yet. I've just been kind of experimenting with these two plugins. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks.